feet higher than it was when we started. There's some tidal issues to work in here, but we've seen it coming, and if it does move up, or when it does move up, we will move to higher ground, Jake.
All right, good. And Chad Myers, I know from covering previous storms, I know what a 110-mile-per-hour wind feels like. It feels like your face is being ripped off your skull. I experienced that in a wind tunnel, not in an actual hurricane, but in a wind tunnel, to try to explain it to the public what it feels like. Randy Kay did that a few days ago. That is what the winds are going to be like where John and Kyung are soon enough.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we're already at 90 now. Every gust is 90 miles per hour. Every time a cell comes on shore, a line of the outer bands comes on shore, the wind goes to 90 to 95. And then we may even get to 100 to 105. Here is the bay that we've been worried about. This is Biscayne Bay. Kendall, you're already seeing winds over 90. Easy, because you're closer to the eye. Before you go Coral Gables, again, easy, 90, 95. Then the farther you go west, the higher the winds are. But it's this open area here. Here's Government Cut, where the cruise ships park. This is all open through the Key Biscayne National Park. All of this water is pouring into Key Biscayne and into Biscayne Bay, across the bay and across and into Miami, and that's what's flooding now. This wind direction will not change for 2 to 3 more hours, and the water is going to continue to come up. We're at 3.5 feet right now, surge.
Chad, let me interrupt you for 1 second.
We're easily
you're talking about that surge, and we're looking at images right now from a CNN affiliate in downtown Miami, and the streets look like a river. That surge has arrived.
It absolutely has. Here's the map that I made 3 days ago. What we expect with a 6-foot surge. All of downtown Miami will be covered in this blue color that you see there. That's the water depth if the water goes to 6 feet. Right now it's 5.5. That's where the water is at this exact point, and still going up.
Berman, the water where you are, obviously the water is the deadliest force in all of this, as horrific as the winds are. It is the storm surge that ends up taking the most lives in hurricanes such as these. And where you are, you're seeing the water surge.
Yes, you're seeing the water rise slowly, Jake, and it's been rising slowly over the last several hours. What Chad was talking about right there is just where it overflowed some areas as it came up and rushed down into Brooklyn Boulevard. That's 5.5 feet, as Chad was saying. You know, they've been predicting as much as 6 feet of storm surge, but there were mandatory evacuations for some 600,000 people in Miami-Dade County, Jake. And those 600,000 people were told to evacuate because of fears of storm surge. It's not the wind. You hide from the wind, you run from the water, because there's nothing you can do. Once the water starts coming, you know, if you live in one of the bottom floors, the water is going to come in to your apartment. If you live on the higher floors, you won't be able to get out, and the first responders won't be able to get to you. Hopefully, again, most people did listen to those warnings and did evacuate. Some of the biggest evacuations this county has ever seen. People sheltering now inland, hopefully not heading to Tampa to shelter, because that's a whole other world of problems that you're going to get in the next few hours right now. But it is remarkable that all this has happened, Jake, even though the eye of this storm did not hit Miami. There's been concern about that. This storm moved west, heading for Fort Myers and Tampa. Not the worst of the storm, but we still damage that this huge, wide storm has caused and is still causing, Jake.
All right, let me go back to Kyung La, who's in Miami. And Kyung, we see in different parts of the city of Miami, where you are right now, streets have turned to rivers, that the water, the surge is coming, and it's flooding parts of downtown Miami.
And I can't see that where we are. What I can tell you is the last time I checked in with the Miami Beach Fire Department, they said that as far as massive flooding, that is not something that they have experienced as of yet. But as Chad pointed out, the stronger winds still have yet to come. When my producer, Tristan Smith, went over to the beach to check out the storm surge, he didn't see all that much, that the beach looked like it had been beat up, but we didn't see the massive 5-foot, 10-foot storm surge that was predicted. So, you know, what we are seeing and experiencing here right now is generally more wind. There was just a tweet by the police department asking people to remain inside because of the severity of the winds. And I also want to tell people who are watching this is that this is not the worst area to stand in. If you walk through some of the city streets, through the commercial districts of Miami Beach, the wind there is unbelievable. It has created wind tunnels because of the buildings. And that's where a lot of people, some of the people who live in high rises, live. People who have chosen not to heed the mandatory evacuation order. It's much worse over there. So it's far more dangerous in the commercial Miami Beach districts, and so that's why you're hearing so many, why you're seeing so many tweets from the police as far as a fire to please stay inside.
All right, Ken Law in Miami Beach, where the winds are horrific right now and projectiles are a real risk. John Berman in Miami, the city proper, where it's both the wind and the water. John, the water behind you that you say has been rising over the last several hours, how close is it to ground level?
Well, look, so what this is a marina right now. So the marina slopes down to really the water's edge right now. And I'll walk over. You can see this cement where it ends. I'm not going to get too close right now. After the cement, there is, 2 feet to the water right now. At low tide, there's probably 5 feet. So it's up 3 feet, and right there where you can't see, that rope. You see that rope? That's actually tied to a dock that normally is above the water right now. It's not above the water. Now it's a foot underwater. So you can see where the water has creeped up. Those jet skis, they're attached also to a dock where the water is lapping over right now. We actually have seen a dock detach off into the bay here. That's what we've seen in terms of the water. As far as the winds, Jake, this is as strong as I've seen. I mean, the wind has not blown like this yet here in Miami. And Chad says we're going to see another 10 to 15 miles an hour over the next couple hours. That's going to be pretty strong. And again, remarkable given that the worst of the storm didn't even hit here, Jake.
And John, we know Kim Law is covering the storm from the hotel. I mean, she's right outside the hotel, but she's staying in that hotel, and that is where she can get to safety at a moment's notice if need be. What about you? People at home are watching and they're wondering about you. How quickly can you get out of there, and how quickly can you get to a safe place?
Talking about my mom and dad, who are both watching right now, we have cars parked around the corner on slightly higher ground. This water get much closer, we will simply pick up our stuff. Our hotel is a block away. We have another safe location to go to as soon as we need to. Our camera undercover right now as well. We have a team here more protected by the wind a little bit than I am right now. But no, we have a plan. There is a way to do this. We're doing it safely. We're out here so people can see the danger, so they can understand why the officials in this city and state have told them to stay inside, or in some cases told to evacuate and get to safer, higher ground, Jake.
And John, just to explain to the people at home, if the winds that you are experiencing right now are somewhere in the 80 to 90 mile per hour territory, tell us what that feels like. Tell us what the experience is like, and why it's dangerous, even beyond the storm surge, which is the most dangerous.
Well, you have to do this ridiculous dance, Jake, where you're leaning into the wind the whole time, and then if when you're, or in some cases can swirl, so you're in one way, and then the wind will come from behind you and push you around some more. That's not even the real concern. The real concern is projectiles, right? I don't know how far I can go back here where the camera can still see me, but this right here is an awning that snapped off the building. That used to be up there. Now, we were that way, so we knew we weren't going to hit by it. And down there, you can see 2 pieces of this metal flashing. That also has flown off the building. That's a giant spear. It would fly through the sky if you were standing behind it right now. You have to be very, very careful of that. And the rain itself, when it comes at you, at 70 miles an hour or more, it's not a pleasant feeling, Jake, I can tell you that.
No, it feels like little needles going into your face. Let's go back to Chad for 1 second. Chad, the people in Miami, not just John, and the people in Miami Beach, not just Kyung, how much longer are they going to be going through this? And we know this isn't even the eye of the storm. This isn't even the worst of it.
This is not the closest approach to the eye of the storm yet, so it still goes worse from here. Exactly. I would say we get this for another 6 hours before it even starts to go down. And that's the real reason we don't want you in your home if it's not a strong house. This is a long duration. This is not a tornado that goes through in 17 seconds and it's over. This goes on and on and on. Now I want you to just think about this for a second. Grab a cup of coffee and blow on the top of a cup of coffee and to try to cool it off. The waves that your breath makes will blow the coffee to the other side of the coffee cup. That's what's happening here. The waves, because of the wind, are blowing the ocean on the other side of the coffee cup. And there's our Kyunghwa right there. What's happening here, the water is piling up, but it's going around here through Government Cut, and it's piling here. So if we keep pushing the air from our coffee cup or the wind, it's going to pile up here. Not so much in Miami Beach because it's going to go around. Not so much on Fisher Island because it's going to go around. This is the area, right there is our John Berman. This is the area that's flooding right now. It's the Brickell area of Miami and also even farther to the north. We're seeing those now waves and storm surge numbers at about 5.5 feet. That's enough to get over some seawalls there in downtown Miami.
All right, Chad, thank you so much. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we're going to check in with some people on the west coast of Florida, where the eye of the hurricane is headed. Keep in mind all this horror that we're seeing in Miami and Miami Beach. This isn't even the eye of the storm. The eye of the storm has gone through the Keys. We don't know exactly what the situation is like there, but we're going to now experience, the country's going to experience the eye of the storm hitting the west coast of Florida. Stay with us.
And really assess exactly what they need, but they know there's water over US 1. I mean, if you think about what do we have to do down there, we got to make sure we get US 1 open. There's one road down there, right? We got to get all those, make sure all those bridges, survive this, because one bridge, then everybody south of the bridge is stranded. We've got to find out what the airports are like. So the storm is still passing there. You know, the storm surge. We'll see how bad that is down there. But you can watch, what you see on TV is exactly what you're hearing from Miami. They've got a lot of wind, and they'll get the same storm surge as the storm moves north.
Sure. Now up here in the Panhandle, obviously the storm's kind of taking people by surprise. I think even Tallahassee thought there was going to be a near miss a couple of days ago. Now the city's in kind of the center of the cone. What preparations are being done as of right now, especially with gas? Because I know there's a bit of a shortage.
We have been working on getting gas into the state for this entire week. Unfortunately now our ports are closed, which were our primary ports for gas are Tampa and Port Everglades. We are the Corps here. We are working with them to make sure as soon as the storm passes we can get those ports open to get fuel here. We will provide escorts again. Law enforcement escorts to the carriers to get to the gas stations as much as possible. I waived the fuel tax to see if we can get more gas into the state. We've done everything we can to get as much fuel here as possible. I know there's been lines, there's been outages, but we're going to work every day to keep doing it. It'll be really important to get the ports back open, and I know it's something that the ports have already talked to the Army Corps to make sure they know a process to get that done as quickly as they can.
Governor, in the immediate aftermath, after the storm is cleared out, well, especially for South Florida right now, the people that went to shelters, how long could they expect to either sit in place and wait to say here that their neighborhood is okay to at least check out or go back into?
Well, clearly every county is going to be a little bit different what happened in their county. If you're in the inner counties, if you're in the middle of the state, it's probably going to be a little bit different because of mostly wind and some rain. You won't have the storm surge. So what will happen in every county, they'll try to get let people know what happened. I mean, but the issues that every family is going to deal with is, one, do you have power back? And if you don't have power, do you want to stay in a shelter? That's one. Two, we've got to make sure we have fuel for everybody. We've got to make sure we have water and food for everybody. So we've pre-positioned assets. FEMA's pre-positioned assets. We got to get those things as fast as we can to the southern part of the state. But all the assets for this it's slowed down the fact that this has covered the whole state. And so as you try to move the assets down to the southern part of the state, we got to let this storm pass, so it's safe to drive on our roads and things like that. So everybody's going to have to be very patient.
In Hardin County, Governor, a sheriff's deputy was killed in a storm-related collision. What type of guidance is being given to first responders? Should they be on the road right now at this point when the storm's coming short?
So, in every county, if you talk to the sheriff's department, every county, the police department, they have protocols for people are supposed to be on the road. As you know, in the middle of the storm, you can't drive certain vehicles because of the wind, and whether it's the wind or the rain. But in every county, they make those decisions.
Governor, it's been almost a week, 5 days at least, since we've been waiting for this storm, and now it's here. I know you've been all over the state. What kind of a toll is it taking on you, and what have you learned about the state and the people?
Well, one thing when you go through this, what you'll learn is you have a really good state emergency management team. I mean, Brian Kuhn and his team, they do a really good job. If you go around the state and whether you're talking to the emergency management officials locally or you're talking to the law enforcement, they're absolutely committed. Also, you have to be impressed with your National Guard. I mean, these are individuals that are showing up. They're coming on active duty when they don't know what's going to happen to their own family. The other thing is, I want to thank President Trump. I mean, I've talked to him pretty much every day, and I've talked to the FEMA administrator almost, I think, every day. You've got FEMA officials here. People, but that's true for every federal agency. People are working hard. There's a lot of unknowns, and that's what you worry about.
Unfortunately, you can also see a few people also trying to walk through this water. Not recommended, of course, but for people who are familiar, this is the area where the grocery store Publix is. Now, we've been trying to get the best position out here, Jake, to show you both the ponding and the surge. It's a little difficult just because there's a lot of trees down, there's a lot of debris. You can also see lots of water on this end, a lot of the skyline from Miami. You can see also here a lot of these residential buildings, but this is a huge problem, of course, for Miami, because these roads are ponding. They are receiving a lot of surge from the ocean. I'm about 3 to 4 blocks from the ocean, and you can see that ponding is occurring, surge is coming through, and the 16 counties in South Florida have a system of about 2,100 canals, 2,000 berms and levees that protect the city. Those structures have to work to drain all this water. So a huge feat, Jake. Irma testing the structures here in Miami and also testing the decisions made by people, both by public officials and people who decided not to evacuate when an evacuation order was issued. Jake? And
Rosa Flores, we're also seeing these images from our affiliate WSVN that show a street in downtown Miami basically having turned into a river. Do you know how far away that is from where you are?
That is probably a few streets down. We're a few streets down from Brickell Avenue. We're trying to creep closer and closer. But I'm not sure if we're able to zoom in, but you'll see raging water behind me in the street that's behind me. And again, just to give people a sense of where I'm at, I'm in Brickell and right next to the Publix grocery store. Now, this is both a combination of high winds, the winds pulling the water, ponding and storm surge. That's the big issue, that all of these three things converge and it creates a huge problem. The other thing, too, is that the drainage system has to work in order for this water to come down. There's a lot of debris. There are trees down. A lot of the times that blocks drains. So even if those drains were working right now, they're being stopped because of it. Now, the South Florida Management District did decrease the levels of the canals, Jake, that weave through the 16 South Florida counties that drain out into the ocean. They lowered those water levels to make sure that there was capacity for those canals to take a lot of the water that you see around me and flush it into the ocean. But when you combine surge, these high winds, and debris that are blocking those drains, it's very difficult for the system to do what it's designed to do.
All right,
Jake?
Rosa Flores, stay safe. She's in the Brickell neighborhood of Miami, the financial district. Let me go to Chad Myers, who's in the CNN Severe Weather Center. Chad, was flooding this bad expected?
Yes, it was. No question about it, Jake. Earlier, the numbers were somewhere between 6 and 10 for Miami, but that's when Miami was getting a direct hit from the eye, or at least a closer hit. And that was about, I would say, 40 to 50 miles farther to the east compared to making landfall over there by Cape Coral and on up toward Punta Gorda as we start to flood the other side. But what's going on right now is the wind is pushing the water into Biscayne Bay and eventually over what is a seawall, but it's very short, and into downtown Miami. That's exactly what we thought when the winds were going to blow this way for such a very long time. Now we have about a 3-foot surge in Miami, but the wind also is pushing this way on the other side. We have a 4-foot inverse surge in Naples. The water is down 4 feet from mean sea level, and that will rush back in as the eye goes by, and then the water will rush out of Miami. But for now, we have at least 5 or 6 more hours of Miami with this water rushing on shore, pushing in the same direction, more rain trying to drain out. That's never going to drain because the wind is blowing from this direction so hard. And then eventually we get up toward Tampa, Sarasota, Anna Maria Island. This is where we're going to see the significant wind damage too. Wind 125. What we're showing you on TV is like 70, 75. And I know Berman was kind of in the wind, but I know he was sheltered because I've stood in that same exact spot. So I know there's kind of a little building there to protect him a little bit, but still all of that debris that was blowing around near Berman, we had to get him out of there. So at least now he's in a safe place. Up to the north, we're moving you now to 8 o'clock tonight. Significant wind in Melbourne, Indy Atlantic Beach too. And then Tampa, you're right in the middle of this thing. This is what I'm really worried about. So many millions of people, somewhere in the ballpark of 110 to 120 mile per hour winds with wind pushing the water out of Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay may eventually almost empty. And then the storm goes by and it fills back up rather quickly, a surge coming from the other direction after the water has already left. Please don't go into any water. If the water has left, don't go onto that land where water should be, because that water will be back, and it will be back higher than it was when it left. Jake.
Indeed. In fact, don't leave. Don't go outside.
Don't go. Right.
Chad
Right.
Myers, thank you so much. I want to go to Chris Cuomo right now, who's in Naples, one of the towns where the storm is headed. Chris, describe, if you can, for us how conditions have changed just in the last few hours.
Snotty. The wind is picking up. The gusts are measured in excess of 70 miles an hour. The rain has been constant. This is what the vets would call the snap, crackle, and pop phase of the hurricane. You're starting to hear these eerie sounds as branches and part of the structures start to give away. You hear the crackle of the transformers as they start to fail, and you're starting to hear the sounds of the trees falling around you, and it's a little eerie because you have to figure out where these sounds are coming from so you can assess the risk of where they'll fall. And the real problem is, as you were just hearing from Chad, we're still in the measuring blows phase for the West Coast. The water here has been sucked out as well. Ed Lavandera took a drive down to the Gulf side, down a few streets this way. The water has receded significantly, and when it comes back and the energy and the momentum of the storm surge, that's where this situation is going to get very serious here. The other problem is duration. This storm moving as slowly as it is, that means it stays in each area that it hits longer. And that's my concern here, is that all of these trees that are starting to sway and all these parts of these buildings that are getting hit hour after hour, what will happen when this wind almost doubles in terms of the gust? That's the concern from here, Jake.
And Chris, tell us how Naples has prepared for this storm. Have residents taken the evacuation order seriously? We were checking in with Kyung La in Miami Beach just a few minutes ago, and there were two, let's be charitable and call them thrill seekers, literally riding their bikes in Miami Beach. And obviously, Miami Beach hours ago first responders announced that the winds were such that they were not going to be able to go out to save anybody. How are people in Naples hearing the risks?
Nobody's going out. The first responders can't risk it. You know, they are the best of us, as you know. You do such a beautiful job of focusing on their efforts in these situations, Jake. They just can't risk it. The best of us have to be there for the rest of us. So you can't go out in these conditions because you don't know when something's going to fall. Just over my shoulder, this huge tree just went down a little while ago, and they go down unannounced. Trees only go down slowly in movies and when lumberjacks are chopping them down. In these storms, they go down really quickly, so the first responders have to be careful. The city manager was here. They have a good plan, and they got lucky. This is a little bit of a snowbird place, Naples, and it's not as heavily populated right now. And people took early cues and got out of here. So they believe they're significantly evacuated, and that's a good thing. But it's also low-lying, and it is spongy, and there's a lot of it that can get really damaged. That's why Ed Lavandera went down to see what's going on with the water getting sucked out and what that predicts in terms of what we're going to see with storm surge when all that water comes back, as Chad Myers has been instructing us. Ed, can you hear us?
Hey, Chris, I can hear you. We are driving along the western edge of Naples. This is an area that is under mandatory evacuation. You can see the scene here. This is we're about a block off of the water here, and you know we're probably won't be able to do this for much longer here as the conditions have continued to deteriorate. But as we drive along this street here, you can see just even on the initial stages and the early bands of this hurricane as they start approaching southwest Florida, you look out onto the streets. This is exactly how things are quickly falling apart here on this particular street that we're on. You can see the trees that have already started coming down. There's one up ahead here on our right that we're going to have to manage our way to get around here. And this is already starting to be seen all through the city of Naples here. So this is a situation. We won't be out here much longer. So this is a down tree here. And we've seen several along this stretch. You can see another one right here off to your right as well. So again, this is just the initial bands of this hurricane as it is several hours away from making landfall here in southwest Florida. And this gives you a pretty good sense of just how quickly things are going to deteriorate and how dangerous the situation outdoors will be even here in probably the next 7 to 8 hours, Chris.
All right, it's Jake Tapper picking it up from here. Ed Lavandera, please get someplace safe. Chris Cuomo, we thank you as well. We're going to squeeze in a quick break. When we come back, we're watching the flooding in Miami. We're watching the outer bands of Hurricane Irma as it begins to hit the west coast of Florida. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Hurricane winds probably starting around 7 o'clock tonight and lasting about 8 hours. 7 to 10, up to a foot of rain, inches of rain, and then that surge and remains one of the big questions. Not just what direction the surge goes in depending on where the wind is moving, but how high that surge is going to be. Is it going to be 5 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet? Right now the expectation is that in the Tampa-St. Pete area, it'll be about 5 to 8 feet. But again, this area has not seen a major hurricane since 1921. The population of the Tampa Bay area at that time was 135,000 people. It is nearly 3 million people today. It has changed drastically since then, and the entire region is waiting to see what happens now. Jonathan Vigliotti is also along the Gulf Coast. He is south of us. He is in Naples, which is also going to get it, we expect, very bad. Jonathan?
Yeah, that's correct. And Jeff, right now we're having gusts measuring around 60 miles per hour. They're so fast that the sheriff's office is saying all emergency vehicles are now cleared from the roads. They will not be returning to the streets until that wind dies down, until the storm has long cleared. Concern.
I am in touch with several of our neighbors. We keep checking in. We do have one neighbor that has the type of generator that kicks in immediately after losing the power. And they have indicated, feel free to come by if it gets to be too much for you once the power has gone out.
Okay. Yvonne Pandolfo, thank you so much for letting our viewers in on what you're experiencing there. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you, Yvonne. As we've been mentioning, Miami is beginning to